Welcome back. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of rare British pennies. At first glance, the humble one-penny coin may look like nothing more than everyday small change, but certain dates, designs, and minting errors have turned some of these coins into highly sought-after treasures. Collectors worldwide are willing to pay incredible sums of money, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of dollars, for the right penny in the right condition. We'll explore the top 10 most valuable United Kingdom one-penny coins, looking at their history, rarity, unique features, and the astonishing amounts they've sold for in the auction market. So, let's get started. First up, we are diving into the fascinating world of British coinage, with a special focus on one of the most collectible coins from the World War II era, the United Kingdom one penny from 1944. While most people may overlook this coin as just an old piece of bronze, in very fine condition, it holds significant historical value, collector demand, and in some cases, a surprisingly high price in the auction market. So, if you have a 1944 penny tucked away in a drawer or inherited from family, you'll definitely want to stick around to learn why it could be worth much more than you think. The year 1944 was a defining moment in history, as the world was still engulfed in World War II. Britain, under King George VI, was not only fighting on the battlefield but also managing its economy during a time of severe shortages. The one-penny coin of this year is a symbol of resilience, as millions were minted to keep the economy moving despite the challenges of wartime Britain. Made of bronze, the coin carried the portrait of King George VI on the obverse, representing stability and leadership during those uncertain years. The reverse, featuring Britannia seated with a trident and shield, symbolized Britain's naval strength and determination. The 1944 one penny is a large bronze coin, weighing about 9.4 grams and measuring 30.8 millimeters in diameter. On the obverse side, you'll find the bust of King George VI facing left, with the Latin inscription Georgius 6d, G, Br, OMN, Rex F laughing face, IND, IMP, which translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. The reverse design features Britannia, seated proudly with her shield and trident, an enduring image of strength and authority. What makes coins from this era unique is not only their classical design, but also the craftsmanship and the historical weight they carry from being minted during wartime Britain. While millions of 1944 pennies were produced, not all of them have survived in collectible condition. Most circulated heavily during the war and post-war years, meaning that many examples today are worn, corroded, or damaged. Finding one in very fine condition is far less common and greatly increases its desirability among collectors. Additionally, wartime coins hold extra sentimental and historical value, which adds to the demand. Collectors from around the world, especially those interested in British history and World War II memorabilia, are always on the lookout for coins like this. The combination of age, condition, and historical significance makes the 1944 penny a prized piece. So, what is a 1944 United Kingdom one penny worth today in the auction market? In average circulated condition, it might fetch just a few dollars. However, in very fine condition, the value increases significantly. Depending on the grade and eye appeal, a 1944 penny can sell anywhere from $12,500. Exceptional examples in even higher grades, such as extremely fine or uncirculated, have been known to reach well over $25,100 or more at auctions. The coin's true value often depends on rarity of condition, collector interest, and the specific auction or marketplace where it is sold. For those who own one in very fine condition, it represents not just a coin, but a small piece of wartime history with real monetary value. If you're a collector looking to add a 1944 one penny to your collection, there are a few important things to keep in mind. First, always check the condition of the coin carefully. The clearer the details of King George VI's portrait and Britannia's figure, the more valuable the coin will be. Second, make sure the coin is authentic. Avoid harshly cleaned or damaged coins, as these significantly reduce value. Third, store your coins properly in protective holders to prevent tarnish and scratches. Finally, when buying or selling, look for trusted auction houses or certified dealers to ensure you're getting a fair price. A well-preserved 1944 penny is always a worthy addition to any British coin collection. The 1944 United Kingdom 1 penny, in very fine condition, is more than just a piece of bronze. It's a living artifact of World War II Britain, carrying both historical and financial value. From its detailed design to its wartime background, this coin captures the resilience of a nation during one of the most challenging times in modern history. And while many may pass it off as just another old penny, collectors know that in the right condition, it can be worth big dollars in today's auction market. Take a closer look, you might just be holding a hidden treasure in your hands. Next up, we're going to talk about a truly fascinating coin from the United Kingdom, the 1945 1 penny. Now, at first glance, this coin might look ordinary, and in dirty or circulated condition it may not seem like much. This piece of history has great significance, and when you dive deeper into its background, you'll see why collectors across the globe are willing to pay big money for it at auction. So, let's explore the story behind the 1945 UK 1 penny, its unique features, and why even a dirty or worn coin can carry surprising value in today's rare coin market. The 1945 United Kingdom 1 penny belongs to the famous pre-decimal series, minted before Britain switched over to the decimal system in 1971. The coin was struck during the reign of King George VI, who ruled from 1936 until 1952. The mid-1940s was a period marked by the end of World War II, and coins minted during this time have a strong historical connection, representing resilience, recovery, and the economic rebuilding of Britain. Though millions of pennies were struck in 1945, many of them were heavily used in circulation, and today they often appear in dirty or worn condition, exactly the type we're discussing. The historical context makes this coin more than just copper and metal. It's a snapshot of Britain's wartime and post-war economy. The 1945 penny features the portrait of King George VI on the obverse, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. His image is encircled by the Latin inscription Georgius 6d, G, Br, OMN, Rex F laughing face, IND, IMP, meaning George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse side, we see the iconic seated figure of Britannia holding a trident and shield, a design that had been used on pennies for decades and symbolized Britain's naval power and strength. The coin was struck in bronze, and although many surviving examples are dirty, corroded, or even stained due to circulation and age, these imperfections often highlight the authenticity and journey of the coin through time. While the 1945 penny was not the rarest mintage by numbers, its rarity comes into play due to condition and survival rate. Most of these coins were used heavily in everyday transactions and were not saved in pristine condition. Finding a 1945 penny that is even moderately well-preserved is becoming increasingly uncommon. Even dirty or corroded coins are still collected, especially when they can be cleaned carefully or when they carry unique marks that add character. Collectors seek these coins because they represent an important period in British history and are part of the beloved Britannia penny series, which ended in 1970. Demand is especially strong among international collectors who want a complete set of George VI pennies. Now, let's talk about value, the part that excites many collectors and investors. A 1945 UK penny in dirty or circulated condition typically sells for a modest amount, anywhere from $10,500 depending on its level of wear. However, coins in better grades such as very fine, extremely fine, or uncirculated can bring in significantly more, ranging from $27,200 at auctions. What's surprising is that even in dirty or heavily circulated condition, collectors still buy these coins, especially if they want to complete a set or if the coin has interesting toning or patina. In some rare auction cases, high-grade 1945 pennies have even fetched several $100s, proving that condition plays a huge role in determining its value. If you're looking to add a 1945 penny to your collection, here are some tips. First, don't dismiss dirty or circulated coins. They can be affordable entry points and still hold historical and collectible value. Second, always store your coin properly, even if it looks worn, to prevent further damage. Avoid harsh cleaning, as this can actually reduce the value rather than increase it. Third, if you're aiming for long-term investment, try to hunt down higher-grade examples, as these are the coins that command higher prices in the market. Finally, always check authenticity and deal with reputable sellers or auction houses when buying valuable pennies. So, there you have it. The 1945 United Kingdom 1 penny in dirty condition may not look glamorous at first, but its history, unique features, and demand in the collector's market make it a fascinating piece to own. Whether you find one tucked away in an old drawer or purchase it from a dealer, this coin represents both the legacy of King George VI and Britain's resilience after World War II. And who knows? That dirty little coin you come across might just be worth more than you expect in today's auction market. Next up, we're going to explore a truly fascinating piece of British numismatic history, the United Kingdom 1 penny from 1936. At first glance, it might just look like another old copper coin, but this particular year carries a lot of historical weight, and in circulated fine condition, it still holds impressive value among collectors. If you've ever wondered why this coin is so sought after and what it might be worth in today's auction market, then keep watching, because this coin has a story that goes far beyond its face value. The year 1936 is famously known as the Year of the Three Kings in British history. During that single year, Britain saw three monarchs: King George V, King Edward VIII, and King George VI. The 1936 penny, however, was struck under the reign of King George V, who passed away in January of that year. It became one of the last coins to bear his portrait, making it historically significant. The penny itself was part of the long-standing British penny series, which had been circulating for centuries as one of the most widely used coins in everyday trade. For collectors today, the 1936 penny represents not just money, but a snapshot of a dramatic turning point in the monarchy and the nation's history. The obverse of the 1936 penny features the left-facing portrait of King George V, designed by Bertram Mackennal. Around the edge, the Latin inscription reads, Georgives vide jara ibrit oemin rex fid def and dimp, which translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, we see the iconic seated figure of Britannia, holding her trident and shield, with the denomination 1 penny and the year 1936 below. Struck in bronze, the coin measures 31 millimeters in diameter and weighs 9.4 grams. In circulated fine condition, the design remains clear and readable, although with some, we're giving it the character of a coin that truly lived through its time. While the 1936 penny had a significant mintage, its demand lies not just in rarity of numbers, but in its historical context. Collectors value it as the final penny issued under George V before his death, making it a transitional coin tied to a dramatic year in British royal history. In circulated fine condition, it is not considered extremely rare, but it is highly desirable because so many examples have either worn down heavily or were lost over time. Collectors who aim to complete a full George V penny collection especially seek out the 1936 issue, and because it marks the last of his reign, demand for better preserved examples is consistently strong. So, what could a 1936 United Kingdom 1 penny in fine condition be worth in today's market? Prices vary depending on the exact preservation, but in auction houses and online marketplaces, a circulated fine condition example can fetch anywhere between $10,200. Coins in higher grades, such as extremely fine or uncirculated, often command much higher prices, sometimes exceeding $25,100 at major auctions. What's interesting is that collectors don't just pay for the coin itself, but for the history it carries. The link to the end of George V's reign and the start of one of the most turbulent years in the British monarchy. If you're looking to add a 1936 penny to your collection, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, always pay attention to condition. Even small improvements in grade can significantly increase the value of this coin. Look for coins with clear detail in George V's portrait and sharp features on Britannia. Secondly, consider the provenance. Coins that come from trusted dealers or have been certified by grading services often fetch higher prices and offer more security in terms of authenticity. Lastly, patience is key. While 1936 pennies are available, finding one in strong condition at the right price can take time, but it's well worth the wait. The 1936 United Kingdom 1 penny may not look like much at first, but it's a coin with a rich historical backdrop and steady demand in the collector's market. In circulated fine condition, it continues to hold respectable value, and for those who love coins tied to royal history, this penny is a must-have. It's a reminder that even the smallest coins can tell the biggest stories. So take a closer look. You might just be holding a piece of history worth far more than its face value. Next up, we're diving into the fascinating world of British copper coinage, with a special focus on the United Kingdom 1 penny from 1921. At first glance, this coin might look like an ordinary old penny, but when preserved in very fine condition, it transforms from pocket change into a highly collectible treasure. Its rarity, historical significance, and demand among collectors make it a coin worth paying attention to, especially when it comes to auction prices in today's market. The year 1921 was an important period in British history. It was just 3 years after the end of World War I, and the United Kingdom was still adjusting to the post-war economy. Coin production during this time reflected both tradition and the ongoing changes within the Royal Mint. The penny, struck in bronze, had long been a staple of British currency, featuring the iconic portrait of King George V, who reigned from 1910 to 1936. The penny was not just a simple coin. It was a part of everyday life in Britain, used daily in markets, shops, and households. However, the 1921 penny is now over a century old, making it a significant historical artifact that connects us directly to that post-war era. The 1921 1 penny features the left-facing bust of King George V on the obverse, with the inscription George's V. Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex FID, Def, AND, IMP, which translates to George V by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, we find the traditional seated Britannia, holding her trident and shield, a design that had been iconic on the penny since the 19th century. The date 1921 is clearly inscribed below, and when the coin is in very fine condition, these details remain sharp and visible, with only minor signs of circulation. Its size and weight also stand out compared to modern coins. The 1921 penny was made of bronze, measured 30.8 millimeters in diameter, and weighed about 9.45 grams, much larger than the pennies we know today. While the 1921 penny was minted in large numbers at the time, surviving examples in very fine condition are far scarcer than one might imagine. Many pennies from this era were heavily circulated, worn down, or damaged. Finding one with crisp details and minimal wear is a challenge, which is why collectors place such high value on them. Another factor boosting demand is the strong interest in coins from the reign of King George V. Collectors of British pennies often seek to complete date runs, and the 1921 penny is considered an essential piece. Because it bridges the gap between the more common issues of the early 1920s and the rarer later years, it remains highly sought after on the collector's market. Now let's talk about value, what everyone is eager to know. A 1921 1 penny in average circulated condition might only fetch a few dollars. However, when the coin is preserved in very fine condition, its worth can rise dramatically. At recent auctions, well-preserved examples of the 1921 penny have sold for anywhere between $13,200, depending on eye appeal, color, and strike quality. Coins with exceptional detail and minimal wear, bordering on extremely fine, have been known to push values even higher, sometimes surpassing $25,300 at auction. This shows just how much condition impacts value. The better the preservation, the more desirable and therefore more valuable the coin becomes. For those interested in adding a 1921 penny to their collection, here are a few tips. Look for coins with clear details on King George V's portrait and Britannia. Even wear is acceptable, but heavy damage will lower the value. Many old pennies have been polished, which can hurt their market value. Collectors prefer natural patina and original surfaces. To avoid counterfeits or altered coins, purchase from trusted dealers or established auction houses. Use coin holders or albums to prevent damage and preserve condition, as even slight scratches can affect value. If possible, aim for very fine or better, as these coins hold stronger long-term investment potential. The United Kingdom 1 penny of 1921 in very fine condition is far more than just an old coin. It's a rare collectible with both historical and financial value. From its ties to King George V and post-war Britain to its scarcity and higher grades, this coin continues to capture the imagination of collectors worldwide. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or just starting your coin collecting journey, the 1921 penny is a fantastic piece to hunt for. With rising demand and strong auction results, it remains a timeless treasure that connects history with the thrill of collecting. Next up, we're going to explore a fascinating piece of British coinage history, the United Kingdom 1 penny from the year 1938. At first glance, it may look like just another old copper coin, and when found in a lightly rusty condition it might seem less appealing. But don't be fooled. This coin has a rich historical background, unique design features, and a surprising collector demand that makes it far more valuable than its face value. In fact, depending on condition and rarity, some of these coins have gone on to sell for big money at auctions in dollars. Let's take a closer look at why the 1938 penny is so special. The 1938 penny belongs to the reign of King George VI, who came to the throne in 1936 after the abdication of his brother, King Edward VIII. The penny continued the long tradition of British bronze coinage, which had been in circulation since the mid-19th century. By 1938, Britain was standing on the brink of World War II, making this coin not only a piece of monetary history, but also a reminder of a tense and transformative period for the country. Minted at the Royal Mint, these coins were struck in large numbers, yet time, circulation, and environmental conditions have made well-preserved examples harder to come by today. The obverse of the 1938 1 penny features the left-facing portrait of King George VI, designed by Humphrey Paget, with the Latin inscription around the edge, Georgievs 6D, G, BR, OMN, Rex F laughing face, IND, IMP. This translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse side, we see the iconic seated figure of Britannia, holding her trident and shield, a design that had been used on pennies since the 19th century. Struck in bronze, the coin has a rich reddish-brown appearance when well preserved, though in our case, a lightly rusty surface tells the story of time and circulation, adding both character and authenticity to the piece. While the 1938 penny is not the rarest of all British pennies, it holds a strong position in the collector market due to its pre-war minting and the enduring appeal of George VI coinage. The fact that it represents a transitional era makes it attractive for those building historical collections. Coins in lightly rusty or worn condition may not command the same price as pristine mint state examples, but they are still highly sought after, particularly by collectors who value the age and originality of circulated pieces. Even lower-grade examples remain collectible because they bridge a significant moment in Britain's monetary history. So, what is a 1938 1 penny worth today? In lightly rusty or circulated condition, such coins generally sell in the range of $15,300, depending on the level of wear and appeal. However, coins with minimal rust and more visible details can fetch higher amounts, often reaching $35,100. On the other end of the spectrum, if you happen to come across a 1938 penny in excellent uncirculated or proof-like condition, auction results have shown that these can command several $100s, sometimes even more when sold to dedicated British coin collectors. The lightly rusty examples may not break auction records, but they still hold meaningful value above face, especially considering their historical charm. If you're looking to add a 1938 penny to your collection, there are a few important tips to keep in mind. First, always consider condition. While lightly rusty coins still sell, removing rust improperly can damage the coin further, so it's best to keep them as they are rather than attempting risky cleaning. Second, check the details on both sides, particularly the clarity of the king's portrait and Britannia's design, since these determine much of the coin's value. Lastly, always buy from trusted dealers or auction houses to ensure authenticity. With patience, you might find a well-preserved example that balances both affordability and historical appeal. The 1938 United Kingdom 1 penny in lightly rusty condition may not look like a treasure at first, but when you consider its background, design, and demand among collectors, it becomes clear why this coin is such a valuable piece of history. Whether you're a beginner in coin collecting or a seasoned numismatist, adding a 1938 penny to your collection connects you to an era of great historical importance. So, it could be worth much more than you think in today's auction market. Next up, the United Kingdom 1 penny from 1940. At first glance, this coin may seem like just another bronze penny from the George VI era, but when found in higher grades like very fine condition, it becomes a true collector's piece. Not only does it hold historical value, but it can also attract impressive prices in the auction market, sometimes reaching big figures in dollars. So, let's dive into the story of this 1941 penny and discover why it continues to capture the attention of collectors worldwide. The 1941 penny was struck during the reign of King George VI, a time when the United Kingdom was deeply involved in World War II. Coins like these were part of everyday circulation, used by ordinary people for small purchases in shops, markets, and public transport. The 1940 issue was minted in large numbers to support the wartime economy, but what makes surviving examples special today is how few remain in excellent condition. Over the decades, most pennies from this year were heavily worn down through daily use, while others were melted, damaged, or lost. As a result, only a small number of 1940 pennies have survived in very fine condition, making them highly desirable to serious collectors. The design of the 1941 penny is both classic and symbolic of its time. On the obverse, we see the portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget, with the Latin inscription Georgives 6D, G, BR, OMN, Rex F laughing face, IND, IMP, which translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. This alone makes the coin historically fascinating, as it reflects Britain's vast empire during the early 20th century. On the reverse, the coin features Britannia seated beside a shield and holding a trident, a traditional emblem of strength and naval power. Struck in bronze, the coin has a weight of 9.45 grams and a diameter of 30.8 millimeters, which gives it a solid feel compared to the much smaller pennies of later years. Collectors especially admire sharp strikes and deep details in this coin, which are rare to find after decades of circulation. While the 1940 penny was not the lowest mintage of the series, finding one in very fine condition or higher is surprisingly difficult. Most surviving examples show heavy wear, scratches, or corrosion due to age and use. Coins that still display clear details of King George VI's portrait and the Britannia reverse are increasingly sought after. This scarcity in high grades has created strong demand among collectors, especially those who focus on pre-decimal coinage or coins from the wartime years. Furthermore, collectors value the 1940 penny as part of completing a George VI penny set, which makes it even more desirable. Now, let's talk about what everyone is eager to know: the auction value. A 1941 penny in circulated condition usually sells for just a few dollars, depending on where. However, when the coin is preserved in very fine condition, values rise significantly. In auctions, these coins can fetch anywhere between $14,100, and in some cases, particularly strong examples with excellent detail and minimal wear have sold for over $26,150. The price depends on the coin's sharpness, luster, and whether it has been well preserved without cleaning or corrosion. While it may not reach the thousands like certain erorr pennies, the 1940 penny in very fine condition still commands a strong market presence. If you're looking to add a 1940 penny to your collection, here are some useful tips. First, always examine the details on both sides of the coin. The lines of Britannia's shield, the trident, and the facial features of King George VI should be clearly visible in very fine condition. Second, be cautious about polished or cleaned coins. They may look shiny, but cleaning often lowers the coin's true value. Third, when buying, always try to source from reputable dealers, certified auctions, or trusted numismatic marketplaces. Finally, consider keeping the coin properly stored in a protective holder to avoid further wear or environmental damage. The United Kingdom 1 penny of 1940 is far more than just a piece of old bronze. It is a coin that carries the weight of history, minted during one of the most challenging periods in Britain's past. When found in very fine condition, it becomes a highly collectible and valuable piece, often commanding impressive prices at auction in dollars. Whether you are a beginner in coin collecting or a seasoned numismatist, this penny stands as a reminder that even small denominations can hold great historical and financial significance. So, if you come across a 1940 penny in your collection, next up we are diving into the fascinating world of British coinage, focusing on a coin that holds both historical and collectible value. The United Kingdom 1 penny from 1946. At first glance, it might just look like an old and damaged piece of bronze, especially when found in black, rusty, or corroded condition. Even these worn and weathered examples can carry a surprising value in today's auction market, especially for collectors who chase rare dates and unique conditions. So, let's take a closer look at this iconic 1946 penny and why it's sought after. The 1946 United Kingdom penny was struck during the reign of King George VI, who was the father of Queen Elizabeth II. This was a time when Britain was recovering from the hardships of World War II. Despite rationing and economic struggles, the Royal Mint continued producing coins to meet the needs of circulation. The penny was part of the long-running pre-decimal system, where 240 pennies equaled 1 pound. The 1946 issue belongs to the later years of the classic large penny series, which eventually ended in 1970 before the decimalization of British currency in 1971. This makes the coin not only a historical artifact, but also a connection to the daily lives of millions of people in post-war Britain. The 1946 penny features the left-facing portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. His strong profile is surrounded by the Latin inscription Georgives 6d, G, Br, Omen, Rex F laughing face, IND, IMP, which translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the coin proudly displays Britannia seated with a trident and shield, a symbol of Britain's naval power and heritage, designed by Leonard Charles Wyon. Made of bronze, the coin originally had a rich brown tone, but over the decades, many surviving examples have turned black or rusty due to oxidation, corrosion, or poor storage conditions. These black, damaged coins tell their own story, carrying the scars of time. While the 1946 penny was produced in large numbers, what makes it appealing to collectors is the fact that it comes from a key transitional period. Many coins from the mid-1940s suffered from heavy circulation, meaning fewer high-grade examples have survived. Damaged or corroded pennies, especially those with unique patina or unusual discoloration, can still draw collector attention as character coins. Collectors often look for these flawed examples because they reflect authenticity, history, and rarity in survival rather than in minting. The 1946 penny is not considered the rarest in the series, but in any unusual condition, such as blackened or rusty surfaces. It attracts interest, especially when paired with its post-war heritage. In the modern coin market, a circulated and heavily worn 1946 penny might normally sell for just a few dollars. However, when such coins show unusual conditions, like black rust, damage, or unique oxidation, collectors sometimes pay more for their one-of-a-kind appearance. In recent auctions, average circulated examples sell between $10,200, while better preserved pieces in fine to very fine condition can bring $15,000. Exceptional uncirculated examples have been known to sell for over $25,100. Even coins in rusty or blackened condition, when marketed correctly as rare and historical pieces, can fetch surprising premiums from niche collectors. It's proof that condition alone does not always define value, uniqueness does. If you're looking to collect the 1946 penny, pay close attention to the condition, patina, and historical context of the coin. Store your pennies properly to prevent further rust or corrosion. Airtight holders and dry environments are key. When purchasing a damaged or blackened coin, make sure the seller is reputable and that the coin has not been artificially treated to increase its appeal. For those holding such coins already, resist the temptation to clean them. Cleaning can reduce their value significantly. Instead, appreciate the natural aging and character, which often adds to their collectible charm. The 1946 United Kingdom 1 penny may not be the rarest coin ever minted, but it holds a special place in the history of British currency. From its post-war background under King George VI to its iconic Britannia design, this penny continues to capture the attention of collectors worldwide. Even in black, rusty, or damaged condition, the coin represents a piece of history that can carry surprising value in auctions. Next up, the United Kingdom 1 penny from the year 1905. At first glance, this coin might appear as just another worn and aged piece of copper, especially if it's in a circulated or heavily used condition. But the truth is, the 1905 1 penny holds a special place in British numismatic history. Its rarity, combined with strong collector demand, has made it one of the most desirable pennies of the early 20th century. In fact, even in worn condition, it can command a surprisingly big value at auction in dollars. So let's dive deeper into the story of this coin and uncover why it's so highly sought after. The 1905 penny was minted during the reign of King Edward VII, who ruled from 1901 to 1910. Edward VII's reign was relatively short, but coins from this period are often prized due to their limited mintages. The penny itself was part of the traditional British pre-decimal currency system, where 240 pennies equaled £1 sterling. Back in 1905, the penny was a vital coin in everyday life, used daily by workers, families, and merchants across the country. However, the number of 1905 pennies minted was unusually low compared to other years, making it a rare find today. As a result, this coin has become one of the key rarities in the Edwardian penny series and is highly respected among collectors. The design of the 1905 penny is both classic and symbolic of its time. On the obverse, or the front, you'll find the portrait of King Edward VII facing right, designed by George William de Saulas. His image appears without a crown, showing him in a more natural and dignified profile. Surrounding the portrait are the Latin inscriptions that honor the monarch. On the reverse, the iconic seated figure of Britannia is depicted, holding a trident in one hand and a shield in the other, symbolizing Britain's naval strength and imperial power. Even in worn condition, the outlines of Britannia and Edward VII can often still be made out, reminding us of the artistry and craftsmanship that went into early 20th century coinage. What makes the 1905 penny so desirable is its rarity. Only a relatively small number of these coins were struck compared to surrounding years. To add to that, most of the 1905 pennies went into circulation and were heavily used in everyday transactions. As a result, very few examples have survived in excellent condition. Even finding one in a worn or heavily circulated state is considered a prize among collectors. For many numismatists building a complete Edward VII penny collection, the 1905 issue is one of the hardest pieces to acquire. This strong demand, combined with limited supply, continues to push its value higher in the auction market. Now, let's talk about the part that excites collectors the most. A 1905 1 penny in worn condition can still fetch a surprising amount of money at auction. Depending on the degree of wear, these coins often sell anywhere from $16,300. If the coin is in slightly better grade, such as fine or very fine condition, the value can easily rise into the $35,100 range. And for rare high-grade examples, such as extremely fine or uncirculated, prices can reach several thousands of dollars. What's important to note is that even a heavily worn example, the kind that might look unimpressive to the untrained eye, is still highly valuable due to its scarcity. If you're a collector looking to add the 1905 penny to your collection, there are a few tips to keep in mind. First, always verify authenticity, as rare coins can sometimes be targets for counterfeiting. Purchasing from reputable dealers, auction houses, or grading services is recommended. Second, don't worry too much about condition if you're starting out. Even a worn example of the 1905 penny is a treasure and a worthy addition to any collection. Finally, handle these coins carefully and store them properly to preserve their value. Even in circulated condition, protecting the coin from further damage can make a big difference in maintaining its market worth. The United Kingdom 1 penny from 1905 is far more than just an old piece of copper. It represents a moment in British history under King Edward VII, carries an iconic design, and is one of the most difficult pennies of the early 1900s to find. Its rarity has ensured strong collector demand, and its value in the auction market remains impressive, even in worn condition. For anyone passionate about British coins, The 1905 penny is truly a crown jewel in a collection, a reminder that sometimes the smallest coins can hold the biggest stories and values. Next up, we are diving into the fascinating world of British coinage, focusing on one very special piece. The United Kingdom 1 penny coin from 1935 in fine condition. At first glance, this coin may look like just another old copper penny, but for serious collectors, the 1935 1 penny holds a story of history, rarity, and real value in the auction market. We'll uncover its background, explore its unique features, discuss its rarity and demand among collectors, and most importantly, look at its current value in dollars. So, if you love coins that combine both history and investment potential, this one's for you. The 1935 1 penny coin was minted during the reign of King George V, who ruled the United Kingdom from 1910 until his death in 1936. By this time, the penny had already been in circulation for centuries as one of Britain's most widely used coins. The 1930s were a turbulent decade globally, with the effects of the Great Depression still being felt, and in Britain, coinage continued to play an important role in daily trade and commerce. The penny from 1935 represents one of the final issues of King George V's coinage, making it historically significant. In fact, just a year later in 1936, coinage would change once again following his death, first under Edward VIII and later under George VI. The 1935 1 penny coin carries a design that is iconic in British numismatics. On the obverse, you'll find the portrait of King George V facing left, designed by Bertram Mackennal, a sculptor renowned for his classical style. The inscription around the king's head reads, George's V de Jare, Brit, OMN, Rex FID, Def, IND, IMP, which translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, the design is equally recognizable. The seated figure of Britannia holding a trident and shield, a symbol of strength and naval power that had been used on pennies for well over a century. This timeless imagery makes the 1935 penny not just a piece of money, but a cultural emblem of Britain's history. While millions of pennies were produced during George V's reign, coins from the mid-1930s have become increasingly collectible. The 1935 penny is not the rarest of the series, but finding one in fine condition or better is becoming more challenging with each passing year. Many of these coins were heavily circulated in shops, markets, and homes, meaning most surviving examples show heavy wear. Collectors today actively seek coins that retain decent detail, especially on the king's portrait and Britannia's figure. What drives up demand further is the historical context. 1935 was the penultimate year of George V's coinage. For collectors building complete date sets, this year is a must-have, which makes well-preserved examples highly desirable. Now let's talk about the market value. A 1935 1 penny in average circulated condition might only fetch a few dollars, often between $15,500. However, in fine condition, where the details of both the obverse and reverse are still clearly visible, the value rises significantly. Collectors at auctions have paid anywhere from $25,300 for coins in fine condition. If the coin is exceptionally well preserved, approaching very fine or extremely fine, values can climb even higher, sometimes reaching $33,100 depending on collector demand at the time. Rare high-grade specimens or proof-like examples can fetch hundreds of dollars, especially with certification from grading services. If you are thinking about adding a 1935 penny to your collection, here are a few tips to keep in mind. First, always check the condition carefully. Details like the clarity of King George V's portrait and Britannia's shield can greatly affect the value. Second, try to source coins from reputable dealers or trusted auctions to avoid counterfeits or altered pieces. Third, consider investing in proper storage, such as coin holders or albums, to protect your penny from further wear or corrosion. And finally, if you come across a particularly high-quality example, it may be worth having it professionally graded, as this can significantly boost both its credibility and its resale value. The 1935 United Kingdom 1 penny in fine condition is much more than just an old copper coin. It carries the legacy of King George V, showcases iconic British design, and holds strong demand in today's collector market. While its value can range from modest to impressive depending on condition, its true worth lies in its connection to history and the passion it inspires among numismatists. So, if you happen to come across one of these coins in fine condition, consider yourself lucky. You may just be holding a small piece of history worth far more than a penny. Next up, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating pieces from British numismatic history, the United Kingdom 1 penny coin from 1920. At first glance, this may look like just another old, worn copper coin, but in reality, it carries with it over a century of history, rare variations, and strong collector demand. Even in circulated and worn condition, this penny can hold surprising value at auctions, sometimes fetching far more than its face value in dollars. So, let's take a closer look at what makes the 1921 penny so special. The year 1920 was a significant time for Britain. It was just after the First World War, and the nation was still recovering socially and economically. King George V was on the throne, and his portrait dominated the coinage of the time. Pennies were widely used for everyday transactions, making them one of the most circulated coins of the period. Interestingly, the 1920 penny also represents a transitional phase in British coinage. Before 1920, pennies were struck in high-quality bronze alloys, but due to rising costs, the composition was adjusted. This makes the 1920 penny an important marker in the history of UK coinage. While millions were struck for circulation, only a fraction have survived in collectible condition today, and even worn examples remain in demand. The 1920 penny carries the crown portrait of King George V facing left on the obverse, surrounded by the Latin inscription, Georgives Vide Jare, Brit. OMN, Rex Fid. Def. And IMP, which translates to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, you'll find the seated figure of Britannia, holding her trident and shield, a classic design that symbolized the strength and power of the British Empire. In circulated and worn condition, the details may be faint, the lettering may be smoothed out, and the high points of the design often disappear. Yet, these signs of heavy use add a certain charm and historical authenticity, as each coin has passed through countless hands during Britain's post-war years. Now, let's talk about rarity. While the 1920 penny was minted in large numbers, finding them today in good condition is quite difficult. Even circulated and heavily worn examples are often kept by collectors because of their age and historical importance. More importantly, some varieties and minting quirks make certain 1920 pennies more desirable. For instance, subtle differences in strike quality or alignment errors can increase value significantly. Collectors of British pennies, especially those working on completing a full set of King George V coinage, are always on the lookout for a 1920 example. This consistent demand, combined with the fact that fewer survive every year as coins are lost or damaged, pushes the value higher in the numismatic market. So, how much is a 1920 UK 1 penny worth in circulated worn condition today? On average, a basic worn piece can fetch around $15,100 depending on how smooth or damaged it is. However, if the coin still shows some readable details and has avoided serious corrosion, prices can rise to $25,200 at auctions. Special varieties, such as those with minting errors, can go far higher, sometimes exceeding $35,100 or more even in circulated grades. It all comes down to collector interest at the time of sale, and with British coinage continuing to attract global attention, the market for these pennies remains strong. If you're interested in adding a 1920 penny to your collection, here are a few tips. First, always examine the coin. Carefully look for legible inscriptions, clear outlines of Britannia, and any unusual marks that could point to a minting error. Even in circulated condition, coins with more visible detail will command better prices. Second, try to store your coin properly. Old pennies are prone to corrosion if kept in damp or humid environments. Using protective holders or flips can help preserve even worn coins. Lastly, keep an eye on auction houses and online marketplaces. Sometimes these coins appear undervalued, and with patience, you can grab a bargain that may increase in value over time. The United Kingdom 1 penny from 1920 may look like just a simple worn copper coin, but its historical significance, Its connection to King George V's era and its enduring collector demand make it far more valuable than its humble face value. Even in circulated, worn condition, it continues to attract interest at auctions, with values ranging from a few dollars to well over $100 for special varieties. So, if you happen to come across a 1920 penny in your collection, or even tucked away in a family drawer, don't dismiss it. It could be a hidden treasure from Britain's past with a story worth keeping. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating videos on rare coins and hidden treasures. Until next time, happy collecting!